What's up, everybody? Today is Friday, September 25th, 2020. This is A Talk in the Attic. I'm your host, Kirk Ross. Doesn't that tagline seem like it's missing a little something? Shouldn't it be, this is A Talk in the Attic, I'm your insert adjective here host, Kirk Ross? But what adjective in the English lexicon would be accurate there? And what adjective in the English lexicon would minimize the arrogant bombast that's implicit in describing oneself? You know what I'm saying? I can't say handsome. Not because it's inaccurate, just ask my late grandmother, but because who calls themselves handsome? I can't say funny, unless of course I'm using it in the same way I would describe our leftovers from last Tuesday. This smells kind of funny. So if I have to steer clear of the fact that I'm a borderline hunk with limitless comedic potential, then what do I call myself? Excitable? No, although I definitely am that. What about trusty? Yeah, trusty. I like that one. But what does trusty actually mean? I've only ever heard it used to describe an old pair of jeans or the Ford pickup my grandpa refused to sell. And even still, who would call himself trusty? You know what? To be safe, I'm just going to go with something that's objectively true. So let's start this thing over. What's up, everybody? It's Friday, September 25th, 2020. This is A Talk in the Attic, and I'm your kinda tall host, Kirk Ross. And y'all are in for an absolute treat today because my guest is Galen Howard, a wonderfully skilled character actor with an ever-growing body of work. Galen's opus includes outstanding and memorable work in music videos, television, short films, feature films, you name it. He's played bit parts just as he's played titular characters. And across this varied board, a couple commonalities exist. First and foremost, Galen Howard commits wholeheartedly to his role, which results in true believability no matter how obscure or eccentric the premise. Whether he's playing a paranoid pharmacist lamenting the conspiracies of Big Dental or a misunderstood loner falling in love with an old mannequin, his acting skills ensure your suspension of disbelief for every moment he's on the screen. The second special attribute that ties all of Galen's work together, his face. Oh my goodness, does he have a face? It's open and vulnerable and handsome, a little weird, but completely familiar, which makes it so unique and memorable. Please go check out the show notes where I've placed a few links to not only Galen's social media accounts, but also to some highlights of his work. So please, pause for a moment and check out Galen's work. Maybe do it in the middle. There will be a couple music breaks that are kind of cues for you to maybe take a break. Check out his work. What a kind, intelligent, talented guy. I had such a blast talking with him, which I trust you'll be able to detect with your ears. In addition to Galen's links in the show notes, please also check out Joe Gentleman on Spotify. He's the LA-based musician responsible for the theme song up top. As always, thanks to the Michigan Podcasting Network for their support. Get ready for my talk with the wonderful Galen Howard. This is your kind of... Howard afternoon because I watched all those links that you sent me, or most of them.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm so glad you got an opportunity to. That's great, man.
I know that you consider yourself a character actor, right? But like you have a ton of range in there. Not to say that character acting doesn't require that, but
sure. Yeah, I think that's the fun part of character acting. I mean, I think there's so many different colors of what that looks like. I mean, you see, you can name 10 different character actors, and you get 10 very different people, and with very different ranges. So I think there's a lot of possibility there. I think character actors generally, they are themselves a character. They have a very specific type, whereas a lot of the typical leading actors, leading romantic action, whatever, they have almost kind of a universal look, a kind of an everyman, a sort of like going back to like the Joseph Campbell kind of Here with a Thousand Faces, just that one look that kind of represents everything, that's like, oh yeah, you immediately know, you scan a room of like, who's your hero? And it's like, oh, there he is right there,
Right.
Then you'll look next to him and there's like the guy kind of like suspiciously, shoveling a lot of like croutons onto his salad plate, and just like looking around, and you're like, oh, we're going to see that guy again. He's going to show up in the third act, and it's going to be interesting.
Well, let's be honest, Galen. Wouldn't it be more fun to hang out with the guy with the croutons?
100%. That's who I'm with. I'm right next to him, fighting for him.
Right. If you had to pick your favorite leading man of all time, which I know is a hard one.
That's a great question. And I mean, favorite probably, and I consider him a leading man with a character face, is Jack Nicholson.
Right.
I'd say he's absolutely one of my favorites, and leading man all the way. But boy, what a face,
Yeah.
He is no doubt a leading man, but not with the typical leading man face, which is why I like it.
I see you in that same vein, dude. I feel like I don't see any real limitations on you, and it also seems you're in the industry, so you can tell me about this, but it seems like more than ever the whole vibe of the everyman, not the super handsome star, but the everyman movie kind of is becoming more and more in vogue, if you will.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, especially in television and everywhere else. I think it's definitely, that whole mold is getting kind of broken apart in a really beautiful way. There's just a lot of opportunity for just so many different kinds of stories from so many different perspectives, and that's really exciting. And I think another cool thing is, I think with the amount of content being produced, and I mean, now that you have people like Julia Roberts and Meryl Streep doing television series, I mean, even 10 years ago that was completely unheard of, and earlier than that, once like a leading actor stepped into television, it was over. Like the door closes at that point, and now it's very liquid, it's very fluid now. And I think because of that, the whole star system, I think, is really kind of breaking down. I think in the next 10, 20 years, we're not going to see the same kind of hierarchy as far as, A-list, B-list. I think it's all going to be kind of up for grabs, given what the project is. And I think that's really exciting.
I totally agree with you on that. It seems like now that distribution can be done a little more easily, a little more DIY, you don't need to play the game so much and be with the right crowd anymore necessarily. It sure helps, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. With distribution, and I mean, it's kind of a two-handed thing where, there's so much online now, but then there's so many other ways to get your work seen. And there's so many films now that might not even get a theatrical distribution, maybe they might get 1 week to qualify for the Academy. But then other than that, there's so much that has a full life online, and that's really exciting. And so you get all of this content that's available, and then in the online community, there's an opportunity to champion all of these really interesting kind of otherwise lesser known films, and that's really cool.
Yeah, you're right. It's like you have an opportunity to get it out there more easily, which means it also comes with a lot stiffer competition.
Yeah.
A guy like yourself, though, who's you're clearly a good actor. You're clearly confident in your work. So for you, I feel like competition is a very worthwhile risk to accept in exchange for the opportunity to be found or to be seen or whatever you're trying to do.
Absolutely. I mean, that you get to that certain point. There's that first point along the line where it's that kind of wondering if you're good, wondering if you have what it takes. It's like backtrack a little bit, but have you heard that fantastic Ira Glass quote on getting your skill level to meet your taste?
I haven't, but I am a fan of Ira Glass. Explain.
Well, check it out. And to any of the listeners, just look up Ira Glass taste on Google, and he gives this incredible speech about how like in the beginning, you have really good taste, and you know what's good, and you know that where your skill level is below that.
Nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish somebody had told this to me, is that all of us who do creative work, like, we get into it, and we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap, that for the first couple years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good, okay? It's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer. And your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. You know what I mean? A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would just like say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste, they could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. They knew it felt short. It didn't have this special thing that we wanted it to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you could do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week or every month you know you're going to finish one story. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions. In my case, like I took longer to figure out how to do this than anybody I've ever met. It takes a while. It's going to take you a while. It's normal to take a while, and you just have to fight your way through that. Okay?
The importance of believing in the process, and that's just to say, getting to that point, where you know that you're confident in your work and you're confident in the work you're doing, and then you get to the point where you reach another level, you reach another tier that's where you're around a lot of other people who are also really good. Right. And it is competitive, but it's also exciting. You get to be in the room with really good people. And I think that's exciting. And so you just knowing that you're doing good work and you're around other people doing good work, and you've been selected by other people with usually pretty good taste, and they have the sense to bring in really good people, and you're one of them. And so it's like, okay, then you throw down what you throw down. And acting teachers I've always had have said, leave the work in the room. Don't carry it with you. Give it to them. Then it belongs to them to do what they want to do with it. And then you walk out of the room, and then you move on to the next thing.
Is there a fair percentage of work that ends up on the proverbial cutting floor?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, when I was saying that just now, I mean, I'm referring to like the audition process. So it's just like, because you don't know what they're going to do with it when they decide to cast you or not. I think you might have been asking me, if I'd ever been cut out of anything.
Yeah, I mean, that has to happen, right? And
Sure.
How do you not take that personally?
It's easy to in the beginning, but I think after that, it's when it happens a couple times. The first time it happens, it's the worst feeling, and especially because of the time you put in, the degree to which you feel part of that story, part of that project. But again, even in that one case that I had, it was a matter of the character just it was another character that they cut out entirely, and my scenes were with that character. So right. It was really about trying to affect the whole thrust of the story. It wasn't that it didn't necessarily have anything to do with my character, and it usually doesn't. It usually doesn't. It's usually just a matter of, it's a pacing thing. It's a matter of what's crucial to the story, and it really comes down to the writer and the director. It's they wrote a character that ultimately isn't crucial to the story. They find out isn't crucial to the story, and it usually doesn't come down to you. I mean, now certainly you can be given characters that you're able to do even more with, and they end up building on that, especially in a TV series, something like that, or it brings even more to the story than they thought, than they anticipated. So it really comes down to the story, and at the end of the day, you're really just a puzzle piece. And when it comes down to casting, when it comes down to what they keep at the end, it's really a matter of just creating this puzzle and what fits in and what doesn't.
Yeah, I mean that's super. That's the right perspective to have on it for sure.
Yeah, it's just gonna tear you open.
Are you in New York?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, you're in Los Angeles. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're right in the thick of it then. That's where you have to be, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit. There's the majority of the work is still in Los Angeles. There's still quite a bit in New York, and some to a degree in Chicago, and now quite a bit in Atlanta. But still, the majority of it is in Los Angeles, in Southern California.
Where do you hail from?
I'm from Northern California, up near Sacramento, in a college town called Davis, just outside Sacramento.
Oh, that's where like UC Davis is?
Exactly. Yeah, UCD.
So tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Tell me about little Galen.
Yeah, let's go back. Yeah.
Did he have a mustache?
Yeah, it actually took me a long time. I was a little bit of a late bloomer, so I had kind of that like that tri mustache, that like that kind of the reaching for a mustache, for a long time. That little bit of peach fuzz before it was anything substantial. I still wish I could grow like that full Grizzly Adams beard, but I'm pretty much just stuck with this. But I make it work.
Well, you probably have heard this before. Maybe you haven't, but I have good news for you. The less adept you are at growing beard hair, generally tends to mean that you have a smaller likelihood of going bald on your head.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, that is. I've been worried about that. It is. Full disclosure. I hope no major publications are listening, but I am.
Well, I hope they are.
It is. Of course you do. Yeah, it is thinning a little bit up top, but I'm hoping it just kind of emphasizes my widow's peak, if nothing else. So. But getting back to my upbringing. I was raised by two artist parents. My parents are both visual artists. My dad was really specialized in like abstract sculpture and that sort of thing, and my mother was drawing and painting. Figure and observational drawing and painting was her focus. And I think they both went into careers that they utilized their artistic skill, but didn't necessarily center on it in the way that I think they would have preferred. My dad had a sculptural design company, which is kind of a defunct business format right now, but it's used basically is sculpting prototypes primarily for toy companies. And yeah, now with like 3D printing and everything, it's pretty much a lost art. But especially in the 80s and 90s, he was working a lot in that field.
It's like clay modeling, kind of.
Clay modeling, yeah. He used a lot of different things, like a super sculpey and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but you come from artist parents, and so
from artist parents, yeah. He did sculptural design. Then my mom was an art teacher.
So they encourage art. I mean, were you interested in acting as a young kid?
Yeah, they always encourage some kind of artistic expression, any kind of way to express myself. They were always from the beginning very encouraging of that, which I'm to this day so grateful for. They always were, I had an active imagination, and they always were encouraging any way to express that. And when I got a little older, they encouraged me to take like summer camp kind of classes and that sort of thing. And that's really where I kind of got the bug. It was like, this kind of like that kind of babes in arms, like, hey gang, let's put on a play over the summer and that sort of thing. So I did that for a couple summers, and it was a really great experience. And it just really kind of cemented the idea that, this is what I want to do. And just that one of the first times of just stepping off stage and it was really that moment of the biggest direct way you can elicit a response from the audience is laughter, is being funny. And I think so that's really where I got the bug, was doing kind of broad, ham-fisted performances, in these little youth-driven plays. So that was just a great experience. And it had that immediate reaction from the audience there's no drug that replicates that experience. It's just it's so addictive. It's just an overwhelming head to toe experience like nothing else. And so from that point forward, I was hooked.
I imagine Davis's community theater scene is a little bit better than a lot of communities because it's California. It's a college town.
College town, yeah. I think it's very artistic. It's very creative. So that was wonderful. It's still very much small town. So you're getting everything from a small town perspective. But they would have. I never went to UC Davis, but they would definitely have major artists in residence there and that sort of thing. I mean, so it was very creatively driven town, very very liberally minded. I say it's very easy to be liberal there.
You don't have many dissenters. It's pretty. It's so you don't have to fight for your beliefs or fight to be heard. It's you're kind of preaching to the converted most of the way. Kind of place you can wander around 1 o'clock in the morning and not be concerned. So in that way, it kind of doesn't prepare you to live anywhere else, but it's an incredible foundation. I was very safe there. I was very nurtured there by my parents and that sort of thing. Which was I think good, which is good because I was a very awkward kid, and so being in school got very difficult because I learned things very differently. It would take me like a while to take in information, like learning specialists and that sort of thing. I've been told that I take in information, I process information at a very high level, but at a very low speed. So it just kind of takes me a little longer. I'm kind of like a souffle. It just takes a little bit longer to bake.
No, I think that's awesome. My wife's an attorney, and she has the same exact situation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so people sometimes misconstrue that for something that it's not. It just
Absolutely, yeah. It was a big thing to contend with because she might have a similar experience, but for me it was always that experience, especially growing up in more traditional learning environments, more limited learning environments, and I think they've improved exponentially since then. But at the time, my experience was often people assuming that either you were stupid or you were lazy.
Right.
You either didn't have the means to apply yourself, or you did and you weren't using them. Right. You were too lazy to use them. And so that's always very frustrating because because it's of course neither. It's just that you're not processing it in the same way that other people are. That you're part of that. You're part of that 10-15%. I think they're a lot better at identifying and accommodating to that minority now, but there's a long way to go.
I feel like they're always going to be missing. The people are always going to fall through the cracks. Really smart people are just because there's no cookie cutter way to do it. But
I know
you alluded already to the fact that, okay, you came from this really safe, great town, which is good from the perspective of safety and all that, but it doesn't really prepare you necessarily to Hollywood, especially. Did you go right from Davis to Hollywood, or how did that transition look?
Eventually, I started doing a lot of community theater and some independent film and stuff. I did wherever I could. So because I struggled with the idea of whether or not I would move it to Hollywood or wherever. I think especially in that area where I was, there's kind of this misconception, or not necessarily misconception because there's some truth to it, but the idea that Hollywood is a very toxic kind of soul crushing place, and it absolutely can be, but I think there's definitely a way to get through it, and there's a way to practice a level of self-preservation in that. So long answer to that, I was doing a lot of community theater and independent film in my early 20s, was some in the Sacramento area, and then I was driving into the Bay Area for some short films and features and that kind of thing, and any opportunity, so many of that stuff, they didn't even pay you, but I would drive 2 hours each way just to get in front of a camera, just to be around people making movies, because I love that so much. And in my late 20s, I was part of this theater internship in Sacramento, and they kind of communicated it as pretty much we're like the top game in town, and like if you can get through us, then you can make it, then you have an opportunity to make it. And of course it's like they kind of saw themselves as the gatekeepers, which is of course it's totally false. It's like there's so many ways to have your own path, but I just at the time that was the reality I knew. So I went through this internship, and and it was like the educational system before the limitations I had in that they had a very rigid way in which people could excel, and a lot of it was a lot of busy work and a lot of things based on accuracy and efficiency and multitasking, which are things I struggle with, or which are things which aren't my strengths. I mean, I'm an artist, and art is messy. So it kind of pushed me into this crisis of thinking that the one outlet I had, I couldn't excel in. And of course it was a huge disservice because it was completely false. And so I after that point, it was around that time my dad got sick, and 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 passed away shortly after that. And it was in that time that when I was with him during that time, and he was an artist his whole life, and he was supporting us the whole time, with his majority of the time rather with his business for good 20-25 years, and
Right.
and still and despite that, all he could think about as he was sick was was all of the work that he wanted to do, all the sculpture he wanted to complete, everything he wanted to finish, all the work he would never get to complete. And I just realized at that point that how important it was to honor my work as an artist, and to take that next step forward. And really at that point, that next step was Hollywood. And I knew that even if it wasn't the place for me, I needed the next step was at least determining that one way or another.
Right.
So it was in my later 20s that I was then ready to make that next step.
So what were you doing to make ends meet prior to that? Just doing whatever you could, just work like waiter? What were you doing?
I worked as a dishwasher in a retirement home. I was doing just little odds and ends anywhere. Yeah.
Whatever would keep the dream alive.
Absolutely. Just one thing after another. Yeah. And it was. I mean, it all became part of the story. It all gave me valuable experience.
Well, yeah, that's living in a small, safe haven like you did. Without the struggles at school, you probably wouldn't be able to reach for some of these. And if you had a completely perfect little life, and not that anybody really has that, but some of the struggles certainly allow you to go draw back on that. Like you have some creepy roles sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, I think everyone has their own pain, and I think that when you get down to that pure experience, there's no way to measure it. You can't measure it against someone else's pain. It's your pain. It's and when you're experiencing, it's the deepest pain imaginable. So, I mean, I think that's the experience of the misconception of people thinking like, oh, I've never lost a child. I've never had to fight for my life against redneck maniacs. I've never had to, save my family from aliens. But there's a primal need, that hierarchy of needs that is, when it's threatened, it requires courage, it requires resilience, it requires, high endurance, and those are always things that we can, if we're honest with ourselves, there's all those things we can tap into.
They hung a sign up in our town. If you live it up, you won't live it down. So she left Monte Rio's son, just like a bullet leaves a gun.
Mechanically, like if you're willing to share,
yeah.
How do you turn a role that's just words on a paper and maybe a little bit of direction from it, maybe once in a while, depending on what the situation is.
For
How
sure.
do you convert that to what the output is on screen, which is, very moving?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a lot of my training was about, and whether you call it, I mean, people call it different things. What's my motivation? What's my objective? And all that, and again, all that translates down, all that boils down to is need. What does the character need or want, whatever you want to call it? What's their primary need? What's in their way and of getting it, and how do they get over those obstacles?
So you really put yourself in their shoes directly.
Yeah, and then there's what they call substitution, where it's you substitute the need for something equivalent. You boil down that need to whatever it is, So if it's romantic, so it's usually love. If it's like a revenge, it might be power, someone who took power away from you. If it's some kind of broad success, it might be power. That might be some sort of validation, some sort of like high validation. Some people might even call it like worship. You want to be worshipped. You want to be validated. You want to be, any of that. Just using bold terms like that, so it's something that really resonates. And then boiling that down, and then figuring out what you're going to do to get that. And usually there's someone someone you need that from, and then often you kind of if you're struggling to connect with that, you might say, well, if this person needs love from someone, who do I need love from in my own life? Who do I need power back from? Who hurt me that I need that power back from?
Then you just basically substitute yourself right into there, and then it kind of gives you an empathy.
Right. Sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes you can bring it down to the need of the person, to just a primary need, and then just focus on the person right in front of you, and then go from there. But there's so many ways to get there.
Yeah, and I would imagine because you have a very wide, varying range of size of roles. Like I watched Rob's Problem, which I thought was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
And Rob's Problem, you're the titular character, and you're on screen the whole time, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so that one, you obviously developed, if you will, a character. You found out what his motivation was, clearly. But in some of your roles, you might only be on for a few lines. Mm-hmm. How do you take those kind of roles, which maybe don't move you as much as the other ones, or maybe they do? And so do they move you, first of all? And secondly, how do you keep yourself from mailing it in on some of the ones that don't require maybe the commitment? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I worded that well.
Yeah, totally. Right. When you're a day player, as they call them. Yeah. You're in for the day. You're in and out for the day. At that time, it's really, if you're not really telling the story, from beginning to end like that, like some of the other opportunities I've had, you really have to, you can't take more attention than is allowed you, because then you're not serving the story. You're really there to tell the story. So if your job is to just give the information, then that's what you do. And then you can, in that moment, just so you make sure that information is given. But then you can add in like just a character motivation on top of that. But you have to know how you're serving the story first, especially for those small roles. Because usually for those roles, the camera and the director and the audience is favoring the person opposite you. It's about how you affect that other person, the information that you give that person. Right. If it's a comedy, then sometimes you might be the punchline of the scene. Someone saying, "Where's my bicycle?" and then your character comes riding into frame with their bicycle. That's all like that's all like been decked out with clown horns and shit.
Perfectly timed.
On perfect timing. So yeah, you're the punchline, and at that point you're also an obstacle. Now you're the person that has the bike. So it's usually you're creating an obstacle for that person. So. And at that point, within the script, if you're creating an obstacle for that character, then the more obstacle you create for them within the context of the script is favorable.
So does that lend itself? I imagine, when you first got to Hollywood, when you were really probably, and not that you aren't now, but you were so eager and you probably had to take more of those kind of smaller roles. Did you have a tendency to kind of try and upstage or overdo it because you had such a limited chance?
I think I kind of, when I got more of those opportunities, I had kind of learned that. I think I learned a lot just from auditioning a lot and what's necessary and what isn't. And, so I learned a lot in the audition process. And I think a lot of people make the mistake going into the room, into the audition room and saying like, I want to show them what a good actor I am. And that's not what they want. They want to see how you can lend yourself to this particular role. Again, how you fit in that puzzle. And so you have to know what they're looking for. You have to, often you kind of dress it, you kind of dress a certain way that suggests that character or at least doesn't oppose that character. It doesn't contrast wildly with that character, and just lets, anything you can do to let them see you in that role. Yeah,
what you're describing is kind of a lesson that I learned outside of the acting industry completely, which is that it's when you're inward looking and talking about yourself, it doesn't come out as well as when you're trying to find how you can help those around you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's always that whenever you're trying to sell yourself, I mean, again, whenever I'm going into the room, I'm selling a service, it's an absurd thing, because it's like you wouldn't have 10 people come into the room to tell you how they're going to fix your sink, but they do that in the acting world, and that's just what you have to do. And it's you're basically just go in there and fix their sink for 2 minutes, and just how you would normally. And it's just like, this is what I do, and then you leave the room. But again, it's you're offering them a service, and you don't want to come off like you like you need the job. If you were talking to a plumber and they were like, yeah, I really want to fix your sink, if you give me a chance, man, I'm just gonna fix that up real good. You're not gonna want to go to anyone else in town. I'm the best. You just give me a chance to fix your sink. You wouldn't call that person again.
He's a little needy. He's a little needy.
And yeah, I think that's a big thing, is like there's a way in which everyone has gone to that experience of you go into the room just really wanting the part and really wanting the job. And, and that's usually the way it comes off. It just does that. There's just no way around it. It's just so important for you not to do too much. You literally just go in, you do your job, and then you leave, and that's it.
So if you were to take the continuum of the whole acting deal, where does the audition fall in terms of the process? Is that a part that gives you a buzz? Is that a part that's kind of a necessary evil, or how does it all look, the whole thing?
It's a necessary evil, but I mean, I think I've been offered roles before too, and I love that, but it's always more satisfying if you've been in the room and you've earned it. You feel like, of having gone through that process. It is a necessary evil. I think there's certainly parts of the process I wish were different. I mean, I think it's so hard to really show someone what you can do in that period of time. And there's so many other variables. There's so many other reasons that they're going to cast you over someone else or someone else over you or whatever. It's a grueling process. It's very discouraging because you're lucky to book, if you book, maybe 10% of your auditions. I mean, those are pretty good numbers. That means that 90%, you're just going, and you don't know when you're going to get that 10%, it can be a long time. And so it's a lot of just going, of just slogging through. And so again, that's why it's so important to leave it behind.
Right.
Yeah.
You have such a good perspective on it all. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's come over many years, but yeah, it's a survival thing. Otherwise, you just realize after a point, there's that certain beginning point where you're like, oh my God, if I don't get this part, the world's going to end, my world's going to be over. And then, you don't get the part and the world doesn't end. So that happens a few times and you realize, okay, was it really worth I'm still here. Was it worth torturing myself over all that time? Not really.
Right. Yeah. So what is your favorite parts? I mean, what's the major payoff in screen acting? I think stage acting, I totally understand the getting laughs. I mean, I've never done it on a stage necessarily, but like, man, do I love it.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first experience. That was my first direct experience. The more I do it, there's so much. There's of course so much more when you get to go on that roller coaster with an audience. It's the best thing ever.
But on the silver screen, or I guess in TV or movies, what's the big payoff in that format, which is obviously a very different process.
Yeah, it's very disjointed. I mean, again, it's really just moment to moment, and it's really about just like kind of pacing yourself, because you might show up depending on how many scenes you have. It's different if you have like just one scene. You pretty much go in there, you have your moment, it's great, and then you're out. And so is still I've had wonderful experiences like that. But if you have something a little more involved, then it's, you show up on set and they might shoot out because of how things are framed, the time of day, whatever, they might shoot one of your most intense scenes, right away. So, at 6 a.m. So you have to be ready to go. And then you have to know how to pace yourself.
Right. But what is your favorite part? So what is your favorite part, the acting in front of the camera, or seeing it all put together, or the process of figuring out how you're going to portray this character? Or, you know what I'm saying?
Man, it's so different. I mean, all of it has its rewards. I mean, the preparation is so important, of course, and being in that experience and just having the crew in front of you, having those moments with I think when it's really good, like having those moments of finding things on set, especially if you have the privilege of working with just incredible and other incredible actors. It's the level of invention that comes with that. That's the real treasure. I think that's the real gift of it, is just being able to invent things on camera and then to see how it translates, to see what the camera caught. later on, because that's a part of it, is you do all this incredible work and you don't always know how it translates. I mean, sometimes you'll get the redirect and be like, oh, we need you to angle a little more this way or whatever, but you still, you trust the director to, for them to capture what you've thrown out there. But, again, you don't know how it's going to translate.
Yeah. I mean, you're putting all yourself out there and you're just trusting that it gets captured.
Yeah.
You don't have to rank it or anything, but like, what are some really memorable, positive experiences that you've had in your career? I mean, you've had a long career. Not a lot of people can really act for work, man. You're making money acting. It's hard to do.
Every opportunity is a gift, man. It's great. But one of the first jobs I got in when I moved out here, in 2011, I hadn't even been out here for a year, and one of my really good friends, a guy named Ryan Finnerty, who's an incredible writer and producer, he wrote this film. I don't know if you got a chance to check it out, called Children of Sorrow.
That was one of the ones that was on Amazon that you sent?
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to go to those last ones.
No worries.
But I will go back. Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah, for sure. That was a found footage thriller I did. Ryan produced and wrote that, and it was a really wonderful experience. It was it's all set on a desert compound for this religious cult. It's kind of he was obsessed with all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of an amalgam of Anson Family and Jim Jones. So little bit of both in there. So it's this kind of like religious suicide cult, and there was a lot of like point of view camera, kind of like what you see in a lot of found footage. So it's this from the point of view of security cameras or cell phones or that sort of thing. And
kind of a meta approach or whatever.
Little, all kind of mashed together. So I played one of the cult members. Everyone in it, of course, is like completely, emotionally damaged and vulnerable, and kind of just see how these people just get manipulated and gaslit through the whole thing, and it's pretty devastating. And it was just a great experience. They made it very organic. They ended up like throwing out a lot of the script and just kind of creating scenes from the characters on the spot, and just say like, okay, there's going to be this thing, and you're going to be in this room talking to this person, and this is what's going to happen. And then they would just like, they basically said like, okay, go. And it was great.
Did it translate?
Yeah, ultimately, I think it's really uncomfortable. I think there are moments in that I think are still really uncomfortable to watch. I think it's a genuinely creepy film.
That's cool. I'm definitely gonna watch this one.
Yeah, it's and so that was just having that experience of having that kind of synergy with the cast and crew it really cemented in that moment of like, okay, I know why I'm out here. And it was also that lesson of, that to not take stock in anything, because, for a variety of reasons, that film wasn't necessarily received in the way everyone had hoped, for a number of reasons, the way it was marketed, everything else, the time it came out. There's so many other things, and it had nothing to do with the quality of the film. It's a great film, but there's so many other factors, and I've had that so many times where, you think like, okay, this is going to be the big break. This is really going to be the big thing. And you never know. You never know how something's going to land. You never know from the time the stone, leaves your hand to when it reaches the water. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, especially, it just feels like there's so many moving parts and so much money involved and so much politics. And
I mean, the reality is any movie that gets made and completed is a miracle. Any movie that then gets seen is a miracle, and then if it's well received, that's a triple miracle.
That's a triple miracle, because how can you control how other people?
How can you control? You can't control any of that.
Have you seen Midsummer by chance?
Yeah.
Did you like that one?
Again, really, it was a really creepy film. I thought it really delivered.
The part where they were tripping on mushrooms, I thought the cinematography was so. They captured the mushrooms really well.
Oh yeah, the visuals in that are wild, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I fancy myself a writer. Okay.
Cool.
And when I was a younger guy, when I was like in high school, I wrote like screenplays. Then in college, I wrote a screenplay and filmed it with my friends and showed it at the local movie theater one time. It was a fun, organic, fun thing.
Yeah.
And now that I'm doing this podcast, my Tuesday episodes where I'm not interviewing people, I think you may have checked some of them out, are just kind of me, kind of think pieces, comedic stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's gotten me really back into writing, and I'm loving it so much. So here's what I want to ask you.
Yeah.
I think you're fucking good, man. I think you're a really good actor. I think you got a great face. It's been fun talking to you. I love that your story kind of mirrors my wife's. It's fucking cool. I think it's inspiring, and it's cool. I want to write something for you.
Oh, man.
Okay,
Cool.
So because I need to learn how to do it anyway. I have really no idea what the real process is, right? So, but what would be the ideal role for you? Let's talk about like a short, a 15 to 20 minute guy.
Oh,
and no,
man.
let's not even put constraints on it, actually, Galen. You just, my brother and I have this joke, okay? My brother will see something and he'll say, wow, that's hilarious. That would be a great movie. And it'll just be this little tiny moment in time. And I'll say, that moment in time couldn't even support a commercial, let alone a full film or whatever. So I don't want to put constraints on it. It could be a 30-second bit that I write for you, or it could be a 6-hour epic. Let's put our heads together and make something happen, dude.
Hey, man, I love how dedicated and inspired you are by the, by storytelling. I know you're a natural storyteller, and that's what it's all about, is just communicating with other storytellers. And it goes back to just like going around the campfire and, kind of building it up from there. I love characters that are left of center. I mean, again, like I call myself a character actor, and I think there's character leading men like Jack Nicholson or Steve Buscemi, one of my all-time heroes.
Yeah, dude. Have you seen Miracle Workers, that show on TBS?
I still haven't. I want to see that. Yeah.
The first season he plays God. It's an anthological series. So like in that first season he plays God, and he's like a total just reject. Like he's really bad at everything. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I absolutely love that. I know the premise of that. That's really fun. And as you've heard from talking, the underdog perspective always resonates with me. So I think I'm always gonna come from that perspective. I think, and like a lot of that great stuff that Buscemi did in the mid '90s, his indie stuff like In the Soup and Living in Oblivion and things like that.
Can somebody help me, please? Huh? Do I have to do everything myself here? Hey, Cora, why don't you go learn your lines, Cora? Hey, script! How about paying attention a little bit there, okay? Hey, focus puller. I got some good tie stick. You want to go fucking smoke one, or you want to pay attention here? What are you laughing at, Wolf? You fucking pretentious beret-wearing motherfucker. Hey, I saw your reel, man. It sucked. Fuck would hire you anyway.
Those kind of frustrated characters who always started at a disadvantage, I think are always interesting. Philip Seymour Hoffman did that beautifully as well in his time.
He's my favorite, man.
Yeah, the best. And I think all those characters, they always coming at things from a left angle, like everyone's walking forward and then that person just comes kind of in sideways, and it always creates something interesting. And so always coming in from that side angle is always interesting.
It's like you said before, it's like the Sacramento school of acting that was trying to pretend like they need to be the gatekeeper.
Right.
Philip Seymour Hoffman didn't need to go through that. You didn't need to go through that.
Right.
You each have your own kind of way of. I mean, I'm not saying you're Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think you're awesome, but I mean,
everyone's who they are. Yeah, you can only be who you are.
Dude, I'm watching you in these. First off, how did you land the music videos? Because in both of those, one was a Weezer video for
Thank God for Girls.
The girl in the pastry shop with the net in her hair is making a cannoli for you to take on your hiking trip in the woods with your bros that you've known since second grade, and you make kind of dragons or ruffians and be called upon to employ your testosterone.
Thank God for Girls, and then the other one is I wasn't as familiar with it. That was a cool song as well. What's that second one?
That was for an electronic duo called Disclosure. Their stuff is really fun. That song is so great. It's a little different from a lot of the other stuff they do. It has that great samba feel to it. And
when the focus goes, your energy flows. Are you hearing me?
And that video was such an incredible concept. Both of those are really fun. Very different too. Like the energy for Disclosure was shot over over 2 long days, huge crew, big cast,
lots of green screen.
Yeah, very involved. And then the Weezer one was literally shot in an afternoon. I think I was on set less than 2 hours.
I don't want to be unoriginal, but I got to ask this question to you.
Yeah,
how many cannolis did you actually put down in that day?
I did not think to pace myself, and neither did they. So I think I ate about 5 in 30 minutes, and that was rough. I remember at one point I looked up and I said, I got one more in me.
I'll do it. This is
yeah, I got one more, guys. Unless you got a spit bucket, I'm not. This is kind of end of the road, because when it's the end of the road and there's no going back. It was. They shot all the angles at that point, and then at the end it was all of the carnage, and so then it was just me throwing things and smashing things, and smashing up against my face. Didn't have to eat it. Just did a lot of all the gore, all the cannoli gore.
Everyone listening, please go to the show notes where you'll see links to all these things. It'll be very clear down there. I'm not going to tell you now because I haven't written them yet, but it'll be very clear down there so that you can go check out Galen's work. But there is a commonality amongst the Energy song and Thank God for Girls, and that's that you are the leading man in both of those videos, very much so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You even show range in those videos too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, again, it's a very different perspective in each one of them, but it's there's so much fun in both. Just taking a very wild concept, and there's a very free energy that the directors brought to each of them, and that was great.
I feel like, didn't Spike Jonze get his start in music videos, right?
Oh, a lot of people. Yeah, Spike Jonze, David Fincher, Michel Gondry, so many of those people, and you see them really hone their creative palette, and it's really great because so many people that come from that background, they really, by the time they make their first feature, they've told a story. They've told so many stories from so many different perspectives already.
Yeah, because they're shorter.
They tell a story in such a short period of time. And so then, when you kind of magnify that, you can just get so much richness, and that's why, people like that are, those directors are, have that opportunity to really hone that craft over that period of time. It's definitely very much the generational as far as the history of film, of the, early filmmakers coming from theater, and then others coming from, then the next generation coming from television, and then the 80s and 90s coming from music videos and commercials. And now we're kind of going backwards where so many of the film directors are going to TV.
Yeah, I mean, but these TV series in some cases are like basically 10 or 12-hour movies in terms of the budget and the skill and the cast. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Where you had like the pilot for Westworld was like 10 million. It was insane what they brought to that. It's so remarkable what they were able to do.
I think we've talked about this via Instagram, which is how we linked up. But I believe we're both huge admirers of Paul Thomas Anderson.
I posted about him before. Yeah. Oh, I mean, Boogie Nights is one of those movies I can literally just turn on anytime and the rest of the world disappears, no matter what I'm doing.
Dude, the way just those long continuous shots, but in spite of that, the variety of scenes and the variety of characters in Boogie Nights specifically, it's just like there's so many movies within that movie, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, this whole tapestry he creates. And they have that kind of pastoral feel, like in both in his large ensemble works and his more stark work, like There Will Be Blood. It's like literally, one person, no dialogue for 20 minutes, first 20 minutes.
That scene was great though. Yeah, when he's first, oh my goodness.
Oh, it's incredible. Like, yeah, and just that.
The sound and just.
Oh, the sound. That opening shot with the Jonny Greenwood score as that Jonny Greenwood strain as the sun's creeping over the mountain. It's just, the world you're getting dropped into from the first second, and it's so unnerving. It's so it puts you on edge from the first second. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I just showed my wife, who's kind of new into the more obscure films, and I just showed her Magnolia for the first time, so
Wow.
she went through the experience, and she liked
Yeah.
Tom Cruise's character the best, which is interesting because
Well, sure. Well, yeah, and it was a very, I mean, it was a very it was a very complex character. It was he comes off as one of the least likable characters in the first half of that film. And
yeah, but he's just so damaged.
so damaged. Yeah, I mean, all the characters are so damaged. The game show host and his daughter who he abused, and I mean, her character is so damaged and so tragic. But having that ending on her at the end in that last shot is so brilliant, and that's
It's like a half a second smile, it's just like
yeah. And yeah, there's something so revolutionary, so it's so transcendent about that little half smile. The fact that he's given us a rain of frogs and then can break our hearts with a half smile. It's brilliant. Who else can do that?
and it's the fact that she was with the source of that confidence that she finally was getting in herself was at the hands of kind of another lovable loser, if you will, and John C. Reilly's character, who also is fucked up, because we all are. And that's what I think is so inspiring about that movie is there's a lot of pain everywhere, and you don't know who's in what stage of that, and you got to find a way to make it work and be happy with other folks. And
that's right. Yeah, you have to. That scene between the two of them, between John C. Reilly and Melora Walters, is at the restaurant, it's so moving because they're both trying to come together with their own pain, and each of them isn't sure that the other one will accept their pain. And there's that moment when she's telling him how fucked up she is, and then he tells her that I
lost my gun today.
I lost my gun. I'm not a good cop. For him, that's the worst thing in the world. But when she hears that, it's like, that's your worst. That's the worst. That's the worst thing. If that's your worst pain, then there's no way you can accept my pain.
Right.
And that's so heartbreaking of, two people who are meant to be together and have the opportunity to heal each other and can't, and, are just like touching through the glass,
Right.
and that's just so heartbreaking. The way he did that is just so beautiful.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, it seems like he keeps his cast very tight. He uses a lot of repeat actors and things like that. But good Lord, that'd be a good guy to break in with at some point. Just because you respect his work, I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's very well respected. Yeah, he's able to continue to make films with his by his own rules. And there's still there's not a lot of people who get to do that anymore. And he's definitely one of them, and for very good reason.
Yeah, there's not a lot of people clamoring for movies about Upton Sinclair's novels, or so he just does it.
Well, yeah, but if he's doing it, it's another story. He can he can write his own hall pass, which is man, it's to be at that level is just it's great, and it's great that we're able to see work like that.
Well, yeah, but I think let's end this interview on discussion about you though. It's murky, times are weird right now. Times are always kind of weird, but times are, because of the way that we interact with information now, it's like even harder to kind of not get swept up in it. But meanwhile, you're also growing your acting career, and you've been out there for over a decade now. You've got a lot of good roles. I'm sure you want more. What does the future look like for you? Not the pie in the sky, but what do you want? What's going to happen? What are you going to manifest to happen?
Oh, I love that. I think it's very uncertain what's going to happen right now, but I think we're beginning to get we're beginning to get more TV and film happening right now. I mean, I think there's so many wonderful series right now. I think really the next step for me is getting on a good series where there's an opportunity to really build a character over a long period of time, because like you said, they're now so many of these series are like 10-12 hour movies. And to have that opportunity to build a character over that period of time, because before, if you were on a show like a procedural or something, it's really just it was episodic, so it's just you drop in and out on these characters as opposed to following an arc, and that's such a great experience now, is that you get to build an arc for a character. It's like the characters before, and Magnum P.I. is the same guy he was first episode and the last episode. There is no arc for that character. There can't be. because then it becomes a different show. But now that they have this kind of serial narrative over a long period of time, the perfect example of that is Breaking Bad, where you see such a huge arc for Bryan Cranston's character from episode 1 to episode 65. Completely different. And then, and all that was so beautifully timed, how the camera films him, in the beginning to the end and everything.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, that film is so beautiful in that way. And
he's a special guy too. Vince Gilligan,
incredible storyteller. Yeah. So to have that opportunity, I think and I love doing film too. The ideal is just to be able to continually tell interesting, challenging stories. If I could get on a show for several years and be able to develop a character over 4 to 6 months of shooting and prep, and then go off and make these, kind of off the wall indies, the other half of the year. That's the life right there. That's where we're driving. That's where the car is going. It's a little different now because the TV shows used to be longer. They used to be a limited number of series with 20 episodes. Now it's a vast number of series, but with about 8 to 12. Yeah, there's good and bad of that. There's a lot more opportunities, but when you book something like that, there's still the rest of the year to fill. So then you got to be creative with how you fill that time. Yeah. So there's a lot of great opportunity with that. Necessity is the mother invention. So it's like what do you create with that space? So
there's a new trend that I'm seeing too with a lot of these high quality shows. Do you watch Atlanta by chance?
Oh yeah, it's great.
Atlanta did it. A lot of shows have started doing it where they take some of the traditionally side characters that sometimes aren't big parts of the story, and they'll give them like a whole feature episode where it just centers on them. So that's great news for you too. Man, let's make that happen. Let's manifest that.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to tell the story. There's a lot of shows do that where they suddenly just drop into another character for another episode. I love that. It's so cool, and it's a great opportunity to explore that character, and and you have the ability to do it. It becomes it lets it become more like a novel. More like novel writing, where you have one chapter that's becomes completely dedicated to a side character. You look at like the writings of Faulkner or so many others, where it's suddenly we take a step away from this character to focus on someone else because what they're going through determines so intricately determines the rest of the story. But we don't necessarily get that, and we don't necessarily get to take out the microscope for in a 90-minute film and kind of zoom in on that on what's going on in that moment. But you get that opportunity in television narrative as it stands now, and it's so cool.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on all of that, dude. I had such a pleasure talking to you.
Oh man, Kirk, this is a blast, dude. This is terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Galen, for coming on the show, for opening up about your process. It was fun to talk movies with someone who's a big fan, like myself. If y'all are listening, please rate, review, subscribe, share it with a friend. Go check out Galen's work. And now I'm going to play you out with a cover of Bob Dylan's Don't Think Twice, It's All Right by a friend of the program, Sergeant G himself, Aaron Gentle. Have a good weekend, y'all. Peace.
It ain't no use sit and wonder why, babe, if you don't know by now. It ain't no use sit and wonder why, babe, it'll never do somehow. Well, the rooster crows at the break of dawn. Look out your window and I'll be gone. You're the reason I keep traveling on. Don't think twice, it's alright. It ain't no use turning out your light, babe. That light I'd never known. It ain't no use turning out your light, babe. I'm on the dark side of the road. I wish there was something you would do or say to try and make me change my mind and stay. We never did too much talking anyway. Don't think twice, it's alright. It ain't no use calling out my name, gal, like you never did before. It ain't no use calling out my name, gal. I can't hear you anymore. And I'm a-thinking and a-walking on down the road. I once loved a woman or a child, I'm told. She wanted my heart, so I just gave her my soul. Don't think twice, it's alright. And so long, honey, babe. Where I'm bound, I can't tell. And goodbye's too good a word, babe. So I just say fare thee well. And I ain't saying that you treated me unkind. You could have done better, but I don't mind. You just wasted all my precious time. Don't think twice.